thank you everyone for coming to the now first. So I appreciate your patience with moving everything over. This is our first workshop in our series on text mining and working with large amounts of text. And so this session's a little bit different in that we're talking about both data collection and that as well. And so I've asked a friend and a colleague of mine from the University of Pittsburgh, Arun, to help us out based on his years of expertise in this area. Arun is a PhD student at the University of Pittsburgh, currently working on intelligent user interfaces for computer science education. And so his research is at the intersection of human-computer interaction, artificial intelligence, natural language processing, statistics, educational data mining. So he was a very obvious choice for me to invite today. And he explores the use of efficacy of AI tools in educations and has a recent publication in the Artificial Intelligence in Education AI Ed conference on augmenting digital textbooks and reusable smart learning context solutions and challenges. So thank you so much, Arun. We're so excited for you to be here and learn all about crowdsourcing from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Yeah, I wouldn't put myself too high up there, but yeah, I've done some stuff. Yeah, so I'm going to quickly start sharing my screen, and I would actually pose a question to everyone first. How many of you are familiar with like some kind of data collection approaches? And if you know of any methods that you might actually use for your own research, what would that be? Because it would be, I take a reflective approach to presentations usually. So yeah, I want it to be as useful to your like this audience more than just me showing stuff that I know kind of thing. So yeah, so anyone can just speak up. That's totally okay with me. So yeah, I'll give like 30 seconds.
I think I can share. Hi, I'm a third-year PhD candidate at McGill, and the data that we have collected and analyzed before are mainly focused on self-report, chase data is static from log files, and interview transcripts. Also, might combine with some behavioral data like facial expressions and also physiological data like EDA. So it's more multimodal data. So for analysis, I can say I'm only more familiar with quantitative analysis so far. I'm still interested in learning text mining and more qualitative way of analyzing data in a final grade. So thank you for presenting at the workshop to us.
Oh yeah, sure. So that's a good good actually aspect to bring up, because when I was working on this, there were other colleagues in the lab working on this similar projects of like, you know, crowdsourced data collection, and they had multimodal thing in mind when it was like about collecting data. So yeah, I think it's right up the alley of like using crowdsourcing, and that would be pretty interesting to explore if that's like if you want data at scale and so on. So yeah, so without much ado, so I got some sense of the audience and I'm going to start talking. So yeah, I think we're done with the introduction, but yeah, this basically in terms of educational data, that's the kind of focus that I will have in this presentation. I did not actually put any slides about text mining, but feel free to ask questions. I can specifically point you to resources that you can use. But yeah, and I can kind of, this very broad overview slide. I mean, I kind of didn't want to go into depth about too many technicalities, so I kept it very light. That's why the slides may not have a lot of information, but you know, if you feel like you need resources, definitely feel free to ask. And so, yeah, I think that's just, you know, from the template, but here's the real slide. So yeah, so what is crowdsourcing, right? Like the idea is that you want to collect data at scale, right? Like from humans, you do not need to know about like anything specific about, like you don't need to go around recruiting. You don't have to like email people, post advertisements, and then you kind of then bring them to your lab, you sit with them, and then you collect data. So this is like where you just post something online and anyone in the world can pretty much participate depending on your study, right? Like, but there are some parameters that you can actually use to control for who is participating in your study, right? And that's what these platforms that we will talk about today kind of offer. Specifically, this became more popular when HCI researchers and like machine learning researchers wanted to like collect data, but they didn't really want to know a lot of details from people. Like they didn't have to go around recruiting people. They just wanted the data. So this was a very good solution that like came out because these platforms developed for some other reason where people could actually work like gig work, right? If you have known about that, is like you just go there and you kind of earn a few dollars as like for your for getting by, right? So the idea is that you kind of get paid for your work, but that kind of got specialized into this process where you can collect the data from people, and they are doing that for some money that you can pay, right? So I mean all the yeah, so we'll get to that. But yeah, so some of these some application, like I think like Shoshan, if I'm pronouncing it right, sorry, mentioned is like collecting through interfaces that you might develop in your own lab, for example. And like if it's multimodal, then there are other ways to do it. Yeah, I mean those are they require a lot of effort. You have to actually set up this whole infrastructure for that. But this is so easy. You just can be sitting anywhere and all you need is a laptop most often. So yeah. And so in this presentation, I'm just gonna like focus on 3 platforms, but it's not limited to just these 3. There are many ways to do this. Some people actually develop their own interfaces. Like I have a colleague who did that. Uh, and the idea is just that you kind of post this survey on a website or so on, and then you collect the data and in your own like infrastructure you set up for that. But you can also just work through using MTurk, Prolific, which are like standard platforms, where you can just load that. In this presentation, I'm going to focus less on showing you the things in slides and rather actually walking you through how you can use this platform. So in the middle of the slide, we'll have a short, not exactly a demo, more like just getting you to get familiar with the interface and how to kind of create a setup for that. Okay, so yeah, this is the latest, like a few days ago screen. I mean, what is it, like the main page of Prolific, right? So which you just load on your browser, you get it. And yeah, like everyone is actually focusing on. So I'm an AI guy. Right? I would definitely say I'm an AI guy more than education, but I like to engage with humans when I do this. So I want to actually look at it from both sides of this angle. But yeah, specifically now everyone is talking about AI. So you might see this on Prolific where they're talking about collecting data. So everyone's focusing on collecting data for AI, for things like that, right? So one of the reasons I use this platform, which I'll talk about, was also to collect data for building a model. So technically, I was basically doing what every other machine learning researcher was doing at that time, but it could also be angled towards it's like community, and that's where you can actually look at it as a potential opportunity rather than looking at it divisively, like okay, this is something that only computer scientists might do and not like people from EdSci might not be able to. Because I know of some tools also. I think it's I forget its name, but they use it for running studies, like automated studies for psychology, like students in psychology. I know that they do that in our universities, like Learning Research Development Center, and they explore this idea of like automating these surveys online. So yeah, I mean, this is just like that. It's another tool that you can actually explore and maybe use it in your studies. So yeah, and so this is like the first page of that. When we actually work with the interface, at that time we'll get some more idea. And this is the interface for Mechanical Turk, where you have what I wanted to specifically show here is on the left, you see like there are a lot of survey options, right? As you can see, many of them are focused, like, for example, this image contains video classification and so on, sentiment analysis. They're very machine learning oriented, like natural language processing, like automated model building and so on. So it's like very focused towards collecting data related to that. But you also have some of these general interfaces like survey, right? Which could be a little like, you can say you're not getting as much engagement with how you might see with a face-to-face kind of setup with collecting data. But it still works in some cases where you do not mind, not, I mean, for that, it is a trade-off that you pay for getting more data versus like, just having that face-to-face recruitment setup, right? So one thing that you get, the advantage you get is that you're getting a lot of data in a short amount of time, like 2 weeks. So what I could have got if I had done it as an in-person study, for example, that would have been very slow, and maybe I wouldn't have got as much data. So yeah, like there were times when I kind of messed up some of the settings, and I just had to correct it, and I would get as much data as I thought I would, even like within 2 days, for example. So like it was fine. Like if I messed up something, in a few days I fix it and then I get it. But if it were like an in-person study, you were running it and you kind of hire people and then you mess up some settings, then your entire study data is kind of, and all that time that you spent on it. So yeah, so you have to again go back recruiting, wait for people to respond. Or like, since you already recruited some people, that though you cannot re-recruit them and all that kind of, there are complications, right? That doesn't happen here because this platform offers you things like where you don't have to, like where you can filter out people who have already participated in a survey and so on. So it's not just in MTurk, in Prolific as well as in other platforms as well. So you have all these things that, nuances when you run the study that you can actually use. And this is this actually I found it at a conference. I didn't know about this until then. And this is a very focused towards AI, but I wouldn't say, anything is specifically like specialized for certain kind of data collection. I think as long as there is a human angle to like this part, where, I mean, there are people signing up for this as a gig workers, right? So as long as that exists, I think it doesn't matter which platform it is. If there is a platform that offers this kind of a feature, you collect data, then it's crowdsourcing in some sense. So yeah, so I mean, that's like just to show you the interface of these three platforms, and I can actually walk you through that. Some other critical features that you might be like you should get familiar with when you're using crowdsourcing is like this thing called like sandbox. So what that actually offers is like a playground where you can actually set up things on your own, right? And kind of play around with some tweak things before you're sure that it's ready. And the advantage with using sandbox is you can just create a link that you share with your lab mates, your colleagues, and you can get feedback. That's kind of what I was doing in the lab I was working earlier, like essentially creating these surveys and then sharing with people, getting some feedback. People were nice and they would share and give me feedback and so on. So that kind of helped me make it more, refined, like, ready for, going out, right, kind of thing. And people tried all kinds of complicated stuff with this. So like here, essentially, they also tried multimodal. There was this study where you had to capture the gestures. So every time you would play a video of how to perform the gesture, and then you could activate webcams with these, not with this platform itself, but within the survey that you integrate. So the kind of technique that we followed here was use the platform as just the platform itself, but add some more layers to it to collect data, like adding like a survey and integrating that into this platform. So yeah, we can actually get to that as I show some like practical stuff. But the idea is when we did all that, we definitely went to Sandbox. We tried them in Sandbox. We shared it with people, got feedback. Then when it was okay, then we kind of ran a pilot study on the platform, like with 10 people and so on. get data from that kind of thing, right? So yeah, so that was kind of what we did. Then yeah, so now here's where actually I thought I would play with some demo, but before that, does anyone have any questions, like any just initial thoughts on whatever I presented so far?
Hi, Aaron. I have
Yes.
a question regarding ethics.
Yeah.
So for this large data collection, is
Mhm.
it like the participants, do they know if their behavioral data or gestures are being collected through
Right.
recordings, or are they concerned to be collected in that way?
Yeah, right. That's a that's a very good question, and it's actually true. Like in many cases, when you collect data at scale, you cannot think too much about the privacy implications, like consent also. So it's better to keep very simple, like straightforward surveys on these platforms to collect data. And if it requires a lot of consent and like some details, then it's better not to do it through this platform because there is a chance that they might miss it. So in this other study that I was talking about, I think it was pretty complicated by the time he did it. Like there were many attention checks in different points in the survey. There was also like I think a very complicated IRB also, like the that they had to fill for that. So it's not straightforward as you add more things to it. But yeah, I mean, people knew, that's what I would say. Like when they were participating, they knew that this was the case because they cleared all these attention checks. There was this consent form at the beginning of the survey. But it's not like everybody on this platform is like it's also one other thing I want to note is like you want to keep it short, like it shouldn't be more than 15 minutes to like maybe 20 minutes max, like those kind of things, so that you collect just short amount of data, but they do it with like there's some quality in that, right? So there are these studies that I actually forgot to link, but there are some studies that look at what's this length of the survey, amount of time that you spend, and how those things can affect the quality of data. There are other studies that just discuss how the quality of data that you get using these platforms. But yeah, I mean, for short uses, I think, I mean, since it's so popular and everyone uses it, we can just kind of assume that the quality is the same. But yeah, I mean, if it's very critical to be sure about the quality, then I would really recommend that when you run these studies on the platform, to run like a couple of pilots to see whether you're getting this data. I mean, you get a sense of the audience from that. So, and then proceed further, so that you don't like, yeah, believe you'll get a lot of data, but at the same time, it's not of good quality. So yeah, there are so many factors to consider, but that's a very good question, actually. So yeah.
Thank you for clarification.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, yes.
Oh, I have a question. Sorry, my Wi-Fi has not been really good, so there might be a lot of noise because
Right.
I was wondering, how does the longitudinal surveys usually work in this platform? Do you get a lot of participants missing because of the nature of the platform that we're using?
Right, yeah, so that's very good question. So that actually, it is restricted by the platform you use. In MTurk, it's not so easy to do it because you don't get the same pool of participants each time. And so you cannot do a longitudinal study on that. But if you actually ran it on Prolific, the other one, there is an option where you can choose the participants from the previous study, uh, who should be the only people uh, who should be able to participate in your current study. And then they like kind of the participant pool gets restricted to that point, and still keeping other parameters that you were using earlier as a factor to like, so that they can, so that I think would be kind of similar to a longitudinal study. But I mean, yeah, it's like you're playing with the platform's parameters a bit to adjust to your needs. So yeah, that's one way to do it, if that helps you. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's not like very straightforward in these platforms to do longitudinal studies. But yeah, that's one technique. I think I tried that too. Or I did not, I'm not sure, but there is a way to do it, because every time when I was running multiple surveys, I was making sure that I don't include, I mean, basically I exclude those participants who already participate in the survey. So there is this thing that it tracks over time. So hopefully this is from 2 years ago. I didn't do crowdsourcing since then, but yeah, I think the platform didn't change much except for, changing these cosmetic stuff that is there on the main page. Yeah. Yeah, see something. Oh, okay, yeah. Really great questions. I'm happy. At least the presentation is not going like in vain. I mean, you're getting good questions from that, so that's great. So does anyone else have any good questions to ask? I mean, they can be bad questions also. Yeah, any questions? Okay, so I guess I can show you a few more things, then maybe it will give you more ideas. So I actually tried to bring in Toloco AI also, but it was not very straightforward. I thought to leave it for this presentation. Otherwise, that would have been also, that was a very interesting to see. So yeah, but we'll do that later. So actually, let's see. Okay, hopefully I just start with my MTurk, right? So actually MTurk required me. Yeah, it used to work on Firefox earlier. So yeah, there is also this thing. Most of these websites seem to work on Chrome better than Firefox. So yeah, that's something to note as well, like what browser you use. But yeah, let's see. Okay, so this kind of the page that I took and showed you there. But what I did was, okay, let's see if I can just sign in and show you that. A second, okay. Okay, I have to go through a few hoops before. So yeah, we might have to pause until then. Give me a second. Okay. Something weird happened there. Weird. Let's see. Okay, so let's just go with prolific first, because we're having some issues here. Okay, so so what I'm going to do is like start from scratch, like creating a study so that you can see all those parameters that I talked about. Because if I showed you the one that I have already on the platform, the issue is that it's already published and run before. So, oh, why is it I'm having to log into everything? I thought I had stuff signed in. Okay, one second. Give me a second. Okay, I'm stuck now. Let's see. Right. Okay, I think this should not stop anywhere, right? Okay, yeah. So so some of these parameters would be reset by the time, like, so that's why I thought it's better to. So okay, so let's see. So here what you do, and you can kind of map one-to-one with some of these features in MTurk also. So even if I don't manage to like make it work on my end, you can just play around with it, and feel free to reach out with any questions at any point. So and these have some good documentation, some not so good documentation. Like I think MTurk's documentation is very poor in some sense, especially for those who are with research mindset, because it's more like a gig work website. So it has all kinds of stuff. It's not just research, or like, but Prolific is more aimed towards the research community. So you have a bit more, research focused documentation and stuff. So you can actually go there and check that. You get some ideas. So but the reach of MTurk is large because a lot of people sign up to Amazon using their Amazon accounts and so on. So it's more popular that way. But if you want a little more quality in the data, Prolific is a better option sometimes. I think it was used in many psych papers like before. So yeah, I think it's more popular among the psych community than others. So here, what you see is like, yeah, let's say this, I just created something called MOOC self-efficacy, where let's say you want to create this survey about you ran a MOOC in a class, and then and it's like you don't know anyone, right? You're a remote instructor, and you just want to know student self-efficacy, right? So you start with like giving a title to the study, whatever you might have used for IRB, that would work, or anything else. So here, for example, you can just start by saying like, okay, MOOC self-efficacy study, right? And maybe you can even give more details like in the title itself, or you don't have to like be very, you can just keep it concise. Then you give more details in this form that's just visible in the, so what's actually to be noted here is this title actually is visible to the person participating, right? Like whoever it is on the other end. So yeah, versus like this, which you can keep for your own note. Let's say you ran multiple iterations. So this is something that I ran into. Is like, let's say in your study, you have control treatment conditions, or you have two different demographic groups, or but you have essentially most of the form is the same, just a few parameters change in the way you kind of recruit with this platform. Then it's essentially the same form, but you want to kind of differentiate between these two forms. So you want to actually write that name here, for example, so you can use it that way. You also can describe like, okay, yeah, what they will be doing in the study. This is like more like, this is not what you would be writing in your survey. This is more like just for anyone on this platform to be like view, whoever views it, right? It's right there on the page. So they don't have to actually open the link to view things. So you kind of explain what the study would be. You don't have to be very elaborate here. You just describe very briefly in few sentences. That should be good. Yeah, and if you want it to be compatible for different devices, that could be something I restricted to, I think, only desktop in my case. Yeah, and yeah, of course, a Prolific is very clear about things that you have to fill. So in this case, it actually gives you more details. Like, okay, definitely, this is something you have to fill, and this is something you can ignore, for example. So in this case, let's say this is about measuring student motivation, right? Say at the end of course on introductory programming classes, let's say. And so then you explain that, and then you choose like, okay, this should be on desktop alone. And here's where I was referring to this multimodal setup. So you can kind of use these features to kind of choose, okay, if it's a night tracking study, then you can collect video and then do post hoc analysis. But I think yeah, real-time webcam tracking and things like that. I think there was one other study in this new lab that I'm working in. There was someone who actually did that. That actually cannot be integrated in this platform, if I remember correctly, but maybe it can be. But it has to be a separate app, right? Like you create your own web app where you collect this data, but you kind of integrate that web app into this. That, I mean, I can show you how that works, because that's exactly what I did with this platform. I didn't actually use its internal native features like audio, camera, for example. If I didn't need it, but if I needed it, I would have done using this. I would have built an app or something like that, because I can keep the data with me. And usually IRBs kind of restrict us from where the data can reside after the study is conducted or during the study. So one of the things we did is like, okay, you would store it in your own server, like in your own lab and so on like that. So yeah, and so here, for example, Prolific gives you, now I think this was not there when I was doing this. This is new feature, like that's what I'm saying. And of late, like everyone is integrating generative AI into stuff. So maybe there's a way to generate surveys automatically, and they might have integrated ChatGPT things into this. But we are more traditional, so we might just go with like external study link, right? And the way I did it here was actually, so here you just give the URL, but there are some ways in which like Prolific does it well with the interface, is that, so this was a Qualtrics survey, right? So actually, let me see if I can just show that without, let's see. Oh, actually, this one was probably good. Yeah. Sorry. Wrong link. Okay, maybe I'll go through that. Oh, come on. Yeah. Oh, yeah, again. Yes. I didn't know that I had to log in. I would have done this before the call, sorry. But we have some time, so that's good. And I didn't have create a long presentation, so maybe we should have enough time to discuss other things. But I'm just gonna show you one like in progress kind of survey, and I would show you how this would integrate, right? So here in this case, I have in this study, like, okay, some user consent, like some background. So this is about programming, like self-efficacy, for example. So the student can actually, first consents with like, okay, their data is being collected. And then here, background survey would be like, okay, how many years of programming they have, like what experience they have, like, and so on like that in Java, Python, whichever language, right? And then this is the actual self-efficacy questions. I mean, to give like an example, it's like self-confidence, like after the end of the course, what they felt like and so on like that, right? And what I do is after we do this, right, we kind of, right, it opens, I mean, you can preview this, right? So I'm previewing this to show you one critical feature. So one thing in Qualtrics is that you have this URL, and it's a little technical here, but bear with me. So usually what you do is like, you can add some parameters here in the URL so that it gets loaded internally, like in the metadata of the survey. And so what happens is that you can use when you kind of log your data. In this case, what I did is, so Prolific generates a participant ID each time, right? So every participant is unique. You don't have any other identifiable information about the participant from the data from Prolific, right? Because Prolific is very, especially for Prolific, MTurk is a little more loose about this, but I would still not say that in any crowdsourcing platform, you'll be able to like, identify the individuals on the platform. You can only use their IDs, and those IDs are kind of, I think, masked. Like, it's not directly linked to any email, any personal data as such. So it's like very, very secure. So that ID is just sufficient. In most cases, I think it just passes through IRBs like without any issues. If it's a behavioral study, right? Yeah, I'm not sure. I have not done that. I mean, it will be very interesting to actually try that stuff on these platforms. And how you would ensure student privacy. I mean, that's something you can actually look up, and it might just become a paper on its own. So yeah, I mean, if that's something you want to explore, that, and definitely include me in that among the authors I want papers. So yeah, and so the idea is that you can do that on this platform, and then yeah, so you can, in the URL, you can actually add that as a parameter, and then it gets stored in Qualtrics, right? So the data is actually stored on Qualtrics, and in Pitt, like in University of Pittsburgh, it's okay to keep data on Qualtrics servers, like because it's approved and stuff. So the IRB is a little relaxed on this. So what we did is, like, instead of leaving it on Prolific, like if you actually use the survey builder for that matter, right? I'm pretty sure that data is actually stored on Prolific servers versus like a data that's stored on Qualtrics servers. And so, yeah, and then so you have these options where you can ask, how do you actually record these Prolific IDs, right? Because this is what I mean, right? They're very deliberate about this research angle, right? Researchers have their specific nuanced needs for their studies, which is very clear in Prolific than MTurk. When I actually was like, I just ventured into MTurk before I did Prolific, it was kind of a mess. Like, I mean, we had to do all kinds of things before we kind of figured out that, and so actually for that, we had to first send, I don't remember exactly now, actually, but there was a way to map the MTurks. Yeah, we had to create an HTML which would record the person's MTurk ID and then sends it to Qualtrics, something like that. Yeah, it was not straightforward. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fine that it didn't work today because it's easier to show things on Qualtrics in general, given that it's like so specific about it. I think it was created by psychologists. I don't remember. So yeah, that's probably why it's like this so good and stuff. And then finally, yeah, you can also provide them with yeah, at the end of the study, there are some things you might need. If I don't remember exactly what I did with this code. Yeah, wait a second. Oh yeah, they had to actually use this code to get their money from the platform, through the platform. So in some sense, Qualtrics is acting as this mediator for you. So you kind of create this redirect URL in your survey, which kind of brings the person back. So one thing you need to note is once you open this link, right, you're out of this platform. So technically, right, like for Prolific, there's no way to track you after that. But and that's what the other issue with MTurk, where it doesn't have this kind of a setup where you can redirect them back to MTurk. Once you're out of MTurk, you're out of MTurk. We had to actually go there manually to the platform and then approve requesters, whoever actually participated. There's an interface for that. Yeah, and so you actually approve or reject. Most cases you approve. My advisor back then was like very, she didn't want to like say, okay, no, don't give, don't reject anyone's, because you don't want to make the people on the platform mad. But some people are critical, like machine learning researchers. They are like, no, if the data is not of good quality, you just reject them, right? Like, so yeah, it can sometimes make mad. I did get emails from MTurk people. I don't know how they got the emails. I don't remember. Yeah, you have to put your email anyway for studies, so you get emails. So yeah, but it was all, I think one of them went to my personal email also, that's why. So yeah, and you get emails from them saying like, what was wrong with the study participant? I gave this stuff and all. So that's the thing with this platform, where you have no way to know who is participating. So they might participate with any interest. They might just do it quickly. Like if it's a 15-minute study, they might just finish it off in five minutes, right? And that's why you need to set up all these attention checks in the survey. I didn't do that, actually, such a good job with that. But my colleague did that. Actually, he created like several forms in between, and each of them actually kind of were a way to check if this person was really engaged or not. And it was kind of a long study, so it required a lot of attention. In my case, it was more, we kind of ensured, we spent a lot of time. I spent like at least 2-3 months just designing the survey, going back and forth about it, before we actually deployed, so that and we didn't actually, the funny thing is, the idea was to get data at scale, right? But we had set such parameters, like, which were very so it was for Latinx Spanish speakers, and yeah, like, so there were very demographic and cultural aspects in that, and that kind of really reduced the amount of data that we could collect, because in most of these platforms, again, that's another paper, actually, I forgot to link. Most of these platforms are not very representative. You do not know who is on this end, right? And in a lot of cases, they are not, I mean, they're not from other communities. Usually they're not aware either of the like of the existence of the platform, or it's just like not very popular, right, among those communities. So it was kind of tough for in our case, and we didn't actually end up getting a lot of data, but it was something worth the try, right? If I actually had gone there recruiting people, I actually wouldn't. There are specific organizations that you partner with, and then you do this like a participatory design study and so on, like that. Yeah, and most of these organizations expect that the researcher is also from their community and so on. And so I wouldn't have been eligible anyway to run the study that I did. So yeah, like those are some things to keep in mind when you're actually running your studies on this platform. So yeah, and yeah, I think that pretty much covers. And then once you kind of they enter the complete code, they should be able to like get the they should be that gets registered in Prolific, and then in Prolific, I think if I don't need to. Oh no, actually in this interface itself. Let's see. Okay, maybe I have it. Yeah, Let's just go there. I will show you. Yeah, like some of these studies, right? So you actually have this interface that you see on the other end, where you can mark, and this is exactly how it looks in MTurk. So there's no difference in the interface like, as such, but you'll have in MTurk, it'll say requester ID, and then the date and time they filled it, how much time they spent. And you also would have the detail about they filled the completion code in this case. And then you can hit like approve, reject, and so on. You can also send them a message. The very unique thing about Prolific is it tries to keep everything through Prolific to kind of not breach anonymity, right? So here I don't know anything about this participant except for this ID as such, right? I don't know anything about them. And if I need to communicate with them, this would be the only way. If they had, let's say, some questions about the survey, they could also only use this method to communicate with me. And that was very unique about it. And it was very hard to get demographic data from this as such, like, except for the parameters that we used for collecting the participants. I mean, that's the best way to know that, okay, these are Latinx students, Latinx, people from Latinx community, and so on. But it was very difficult other than that to, narrow them down to, okay, these were from this, other things which you just want, right? So it's very private. This whole setup is like very restricted. It's very good for, I would, if it is something like, I think one of those questions earlier, like if it is like privacy and if it's like consent and you want to be 100% sure no one is like, harmed, then Prolific would be a very good platform for that. I am not aware of any other crowdsourcing platform that's as good as this, like in terms of interface and stuff. So that makes it like really unique in that sense. And yeah, they're bringing in a lot of new features. It keeps updating. It's a new platform, and MTurk has been the same for 10 years, I think, almost 15 years. I think it never changed. Maybe because of updates to the web browser stuff, they might have updated security and things like that. That's highly just the technical aspects of the platform itself, but as an interface, I don't think it has changed since when it's in inception, like years ago. So yeah, so in that sense, like it's better to, if you want incremental updates and things that keep changing over time, new features, it's my bet would be on Prolific actually.
Arun,
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
quick question about demographics, because I see that on so there's demographics within Prolific, and I think that's one of the big, like, why it's called Prolific, right? Is the profile piece.
Right.
And thank you for including this example. And so I
Right.
think where I'm struggling is the connecting the data piece. And so for example, the participant ID, and so on the other one, like connecting the data here to the data in Qualtrics. And I know that in your Qualtrics, there's a demographic data, right? So what do we need to have in both places? And then one of the things I saw is that, do we need to add a question in Qualtrics for them to copy and paste this Prolific ID? So how do
right. So that's what I was saying earlier, right? So here actually I think close this away out of. Yeah, so here actually in the URL, I did it this way, but there are other ways to do it. Yeah, like adding a question in the survey would be one way, and they actually give that as a recommendation here. If you actually, habit, but
I saw those 3 check marks. I remember seeing it. Yeah, of like how to.
So here in the URL, I did it through URL because Qualtrics has that option. But yeah, you can actually add it as a question in your study, right? So then what it does is, then it doesn't expect to give anything to you. What is going to happen is very similar to what we saw in MTurk, the example that I showed you here, which is almost like, the link is detached from the platform itself, right? Like there is nothing that the platform is actually giving you here. So then, yes, I think most likely there is what they told us earlier when we ran into the same issue, right? A colleague also, right, was that we had to actually request Qualtrics explicitly to give us more data. But other than that, let's see. Why am I going to wrong places? Just a second. Yeah, you when you download that, actually, I wanted to just go there. And so when you actually click this download and you get a zip file from that, it has some default columns that it gives. I forget all the names, but it's pretty standard. It just gives some standard details. I think it includes just gender and very few things.
Yeah.
And then you have to actually ask for more if you need it, and you also have to, what else? yeah, something like that. Yeah, you have to kind of request, or you have to collect it through your survey. So I think we did some things through the survey, like you said. Yes.
Perfect.
If I remember.
Sounds
Right.
good. Thank you.
Right. And yeah, any other questions at this point? Actually, I think I was talking for a long time, and we have only 14 minutes, and I didn't know that I had to rush through a very short presentation anyway. But yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, so I will, yeah, keep the questions at the end because we can have good discussion on this. So I want to do that. Let's see. So I just want to quickly show like these two surveys. This was what I originally used Prolific for. We had this story telling app, like in which there was stories about some events and things like that. It was targeted at Spanish speakers, Native Americans, and so on. So the idea was to gather some insights related to the kind of questions that they might ask while reading stories with their children. So we kind of showed these kind of pictures in the survey in Qualtrics, and then we integrated Qualtrics into Prolific. I mean, mine, despite being a technical guy, I did a very low tech stuff, because I mean I like to use tools without having to do a lot of modification. I work with the defaults. So yeah, it was pretty low tech. I just created this on a survey on Qualtrics, and then I integrated this URL stuff, which is pretty straightforward. At least it should be for me, given my background. But yeah, it's okay. I mean, once you have some you're tech savvy, you can manage that. Yeah, and so that was the paper. Yeah, and it just recently got accepted. I just kept trying to submit at different conferences, and finally got submitted, and I'm happy about it because it found a home. That was the most important thing about it. And yeah, that's about it. But I wanted to bring up a new unique concept that's actually I discovered after this. It's called learner sourcing, which is like, okay, so there's a person named Paul Denny. He is and there are a few others like that. Hassan Khosravi, actually, he is from a Canadian university. I forget. I think it's University of UBC or Toronto. Yeah. So it's an evolving concept. Yeah, Joseph J. Williams, right? He also is among them. I actually forgot that. He so at Toronto, they all have been exploring this idea of like using learner sourcing, where you have this forum and a platform. Your university or your school kind of signs up on this platform for a particular class, right? Like Piazza, right? Like maybe you're familiar with Piazza, if not, but it's like you kind of sign up on these platforms, and then this platform gives a unique code to that course and your university, and then students kind of enroll into that course, and there are some discussions that happen, right? And as they discuss, there are questions that people ask, and then students answer those questions. Students ask new questions related to whatever material is taught in class. So all of this is actually stored in the platform, right? And if you kind of erase all that other information like student names and maybe even emails, you just have pure data, right? Like data that was discussed. This is something you can use to then help the students taking the class again next year, right? And those students can ask questions that gets trained and like can help students the year after, right? So it just keeps piling like that, and you have this whole log of things for the same course that's offered over multiple years, and you get a lot of questions that get generated that way. And so the idea is that you can use this as a way to analyze train models, also look at other things maybe. So yeah, so this is another way to collect data at scale, right? Like it's the same kind of concept of what crowdsourcing is doing, but in a very personalized, maybe even secure way of doing it, right? And students are kind of okay with using these platforms because they are in the class and this is something they use. Like you can just say like how you use Canvas, right? Like so Canvas could, I mean, it's technically everything is collecting data at this point in like like Google, for example, right? But what we want to do is do it in a way where it's also obvious to everyone that it's being tracked, but at the same time they're okay with it because it's just normal, right? Like you're asking questions in a class, these discussions can help someone else. That's something you do naturally even in school, right? As a human, like you're talking to people, to each other, and then you kind of note them down, and somebody who is taking the class next year actually asks their, like, the persons who have taken the class before, like, hey, I have these notes, can you share these notes with me, and I can use it for studying, something like that. So yeah, so that kind of concept, but at scale, in this kind of a forum format, that's very interesting, and something I mean, it has enough data that you can actually train models. Like there are some papers that explore this idea of question generation, the same thing that I was trying to do with crowdsourcing, kind of thing with things like, Peerwise, like, this platform. So yeah, and for different concepts. So like biology, there are other courses also, but it's more focused on K-12. I think there were some introductory, undergrad classes too. I think most of them were universities. Yeah, then it might not be K-12, but yeah, so things like that, right? And yeah, I just linked that paper. So yeah, oh yeah, sorry, not, yeah, I keep confusing between Australia and Canada. So this is Canada, Australia, but yeah, I think it's because of Joseph J. Williams that I thought it's Canada. So yeah, so that person is in Australia, but Joseph J. Williams is in Canada here. So yeah, and then these are some papers. I think, like I said, I forgot to note some links to some of these papers. I do want to point out that Aniket Kitur, right? Like he's among the like forefront robot crowd, like from CMU. So those are a couple of people who have been exploring this whole idea of like, MTurk way like before the community even like picked up with the stuff, right? Even machine learning researchers, I don't think at that time were looking at this stuff so closely. So yeah, I mean, if there's someone who want guidance from, I would definitely email. Like I think they're probably friendly people, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I would email him, ask him things, but yeah, so that's the papers. And yeah, since I I saw in that email list, I mean, yeah, privacy, see, this is what I'm like we're talking about, right? Yeah, the privacy was breached, and I knew that it was so young among the audience, and I thought, okay, oh yeah, she was in this Motivation Monday. So if some of you are interested, I'm also in this thing which AERA grad student community actually runs. It's called this Motivation Mondays, and there's also this affinity groups which might probably be relevant to you. And these are spaces where like you meet other grad students across the country. So, you get some experience and also familiarity with, other people working in other things. You might find collaborators, who knows? Yeah. So these are some resources I thought I'd link here. Yeah, that's it from me. And I think we have very few minutes left for any questions, but yeah, I can stop sharing so that it's easier. But if you need me to show any particular slide, I can start sharing again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So there's a lot in there for sure. And we will be discussing more of the text mining and things in
Yeah, right.
later. No. This is a really interesting way that I think, as you said, is more in an AI human computer interaction space and less so in education, but like the accessibility and the not ease of collecting data, but like the amount of data you can collect very quickly is something I think a lot of us know about, but don't know exactly how it works. So we really appreciate that. I know y'all have questions, because I have probably 4 or 5 more. But I want to take these last 5 minutes to kind of go over anything, any general or specific questions that you might have.
Okay, let's see. Question in the chat. Okay. Yeah. So I think for this to record, right? What was that? Good. Yeah, there was a platform that I used. I forget the name, but you can. Let's see. Does Qualtrics actually offer native recording features? I doubt it.
I
Yeah.
think you can upload things in
Right.
Qualtrics, so it's possible that you could record your own,
Right.
like and then record it. And I know I have some experience with video data in in that kind of in crowdsourcing, so we can talk some more specifics later.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that might be something that's better to build a survey through Prolific and have it stored there if
Yeah,
not,
right.
or something
Yeah,
like
you can
that.
just yeah, if you don't want to do a lot of work. But this this other thing I'm thinking, yeah, the person actually did a lot of work. They towards recording, even video, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. But
yeah,
as far as the open-ended
right.
kind of stuff, yeah, you like that's wide open in Qualtrics.
Mhm.
Yeah. Phonic. And it can be integrated into Qualtrics. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you just have to create a form element. Yeah, it's more I mean, what I did was more with Qualtrics than Prolific itself, right? Yeah, that's the kind of platforms you want, right? Which kind of fade into the background. They don't come in the way of your design. All you need to do is just use that platform to get people, right? So while still offering you very good features, right? So that's why it's really good to collect data, right? So
And with that, I'll just add, I think Arun did a very good job of like, let's always remember ethics and
right,
that gets more tricky with
right.
videos. Just, because you can't control the environment like you could if I was in a classroom, recording something. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
and that's another thing to think about too, is as we move into this space, unless people are familiar with it, there's more, not hurdles necessarily to jump for REB, IRB, ethics.
Right.
It's that sometimes some reviewers just need a bit more convincing or need some more stuff explained to them, and whereas others that are going to be more familiar with it, or if there's been studies done at the university,
Yeah,
a quicker process. So
yeah.
these are all things to consider for sure.
Yeah, that was a very good question, actually.
Yeah.
It's like a curveball I didn't expect.
Yeah. That's what we do up here. A couple more minutes. Anything else?
Oh, Arun, thanks for the wonderful presentation. I'm just wondering, what would be the tip that you want to give for people for gonna use this MTurk or this crowdsourcing? What would be the tip that you want to give to students who are gonna be firstly using it?
Okay. So yeah, I think I covered a few things. Not sure if I missed anything, but yeah, like there were some things I thought MTurk could do better, which I kind of got satisfied with the use of Prolific because I didn't have many expectations in general. So I guess that's why. But let me think. Did I miss anything? Yeah, I mean, for surveys, like, yeah, it's like, because it looks easy, you just integrate the survey just with the link. But sometimes you want people to actually view the survey in the platform itself. So we had to develop some kind of HTML template setup for that. There was some coding involved, not a lot, but yeah, just so that we could load it. And what else? Yeah, so it's good to have some experience, but it's okay even if not, because you can use the baseline and then see what the quality of the data is. So that's one thing I would clearly tell you. We always check for the quality of the data we get. Uh, we kind of like, what did we do? We ran a study, we ran like multiple pilots before we were ready that, okay, we can so in each pilot, we ran like what, five participants, and we stop it there so that you don't end up spending a lot of money. And these things scales very fast, right? Like these can scale very fast, because let's say you give $10, like, because you want to keep that minimum wage limit. uh we even looked at that. If that's for like my it was because of my advisor, I think, because I mean, she was looking at all these very specific aspects which I would have missed. But yeah, I mean, uh it's, yeah, like you have to actually keep those things in mind as well, like, but it scales very fast. That's like you spend $10 each time, and then just becomes $50, right? Like for 5 people. And then let's say you don't keep it on, I mean, any restrictions, and then you kind of end up probably spending thousands of dollars. And then you look at the data afterwards, it's like nothing, right? Like it's probably not useful. A lot of it is like, so you have to be very careful at the beginning, at least, to, and what I was also doing was keeping track of how much I loaded each time. I would make sure to not load more than like a certain amount each time I loaded, so that I don't end up spending too much of the funds that was allocated, right? So essentially I would load, then it would become 0 with one round. Then again, I would load after that, like if I needed to run more like rounds of the study. So those were some things I did. Yeah. And yeah, I think I did have to share stuff, things like a specific address, and also for that I kept, using the lab address and so on, so that I don't have to give details. And it's best to use, yeah, one more thing, a mistake that I did was I used my own personal email for the first round. Then we switched to using the lab, lab, I mean not lab email, like more like my email from the school. So yeah, because Amazon is like, I was using it for shopping and stuff, right? So the same email I just used for this also. So yeah, and yeah, so those are some things to keep in mind.
Fantastic suggestions. Thank you. So I want to be cognizant of time. We're a little bit over.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. This is really interesting. I'm okay. I'm happy to stay on longer if anybody needs to, but I just wanted to say thank you, Arun, so much.